Are you struggling with the fact that you really want to be a triathlete, but that swim leg of the race is just too freaking terrifying? If this sounds like you, stick around because I've got 3 simple tips that will instantly make swimming so much easier, and in doing so, boost your confidence and make you swim even a little bit quicker. Swimming has always been the hardest aspect of triathlon for me. I was never a good swimmer growing up. I love splashing around in the shallow end of the pool, but you would never catch me on any ride at a water park that dumped me into water deeper than 4 feet. I didn't like to swim at the beach. Tubing trips on the river with friends were absolutely terrifying.
I'm drowning! Oh God, I'm drowning!
And I know I'm not the only person who has felt this way. I asked a bunch of people on Facebook what their top fears were when they started, and the top 2 were looking stupid, which I covered last week in a video that I've got linked up there if you want to take a look at, and fear of swimming, particularly drowning, which I hope to fix in today's episode. Now, disclaimer up front, if you don't know how to swim, period, you need to find yourself a certified swim instructor. Never swim alone. Listen to your mother on this. Make sure that there is always a lifeguard present, or at the very least, someone who is a strong swimmer that can help you out if you get into trouble. Lastly, just know that I am not a coach. I did consult 2 coaches in the making of this video just to make sure that the information that I am imparting to you is accurate. This video is to help you build a base foundation of technique that will help you be confident and comfortable in the water. Right now, don't worry about those other videos that talk about early vertical forearm and high cadence. None of those matter if you can't stay calm and you can't float on the water. Speaking of which, tip number 1 is learn to float. Seriously, I know it sounds so basic, but learning to float and stay relaxed while gliding is the first key to becoming a confident swimmer. If you're stressed out and tense, you are making yourself the exact opposite of floaty. And unfortunately for you, that is sinky, and sinky does not lead to swimming. So if you're one of the lucky ones during this COVID situation and you have access to a pool right now, and it doesn't have to be a lap pool, I want you to give this exercise a shot. Push off the wall with your arms out in front of you, with your face in the water. Now if you find that having your arms out in front makes it difficult to balance, keep them at your side. I want you to stay long with a relaxed neck and envision having your belly button come up to meet your spine. Now see how far you can glide before your feet start to sink or you need to take a breath. Make sure that you do that before you start to panic because we want to stay relaxed, right? Now do this several times. Honestly, as many times as you need to start feeling relaxed and until you're able to glide a fair distance without sinking. Now once you're able to relax and float confidently, you become, in essence, your own personal flotation device. In fact, if you're swimming and you get nervous, you can literally just flip onto your back and float until you're ready to keep moving, which is something I and many a triathlete have done in open water. And just as a little extra confidence boost, know that there are always lifeguards at every race, even in open water swim. They'll be in kayaks, ready to pull you out if you need it, and even give you a place to take a break, as long as they do not help you by moving you further down the swim course. And you can rest on the wall during pool swims, as long as you remember to stay to the right and out of the way of the other swimmers. Moving on to tip number 2, stay balanced with neutral head and neck position. One of the hardest habits to break for new triathletes is learning to stop pulling your head out of the water to breathe, which is totally understandable. It took forever for me too. But what you might not know is that every time you do it, you are hurting your swim so much more than you are helping it. When you lift up your head, either to take a breath or to look ahead to see where you're going, you shift your weight back to your feet, which you may notice during your floating exercise is usually the first thing to want to sink. To combat that, you can keep a neutral head position, which will help balance you from front to back. If you want to get a good idea of what that neck position feels like, when you're practicing your floating and when you're swimming, I want you to look down, straight down at the bottom of the pool. Don't look ahead and don't look behind. Now, this isn't going to completely keep your feet from sinking. That's where your kit comes into play, but you will notice that it should take them much longer to start sinking. Now, I personally find that visualizing things helps me learn. So real quick, I just want you to take a second and imagine that you're a canoe. Now, when you get into a canoe, you have to be really careful as to where you step. If you get in too close to the back of the boat, it sinks and you take on water and, well, you're not going anywhere. Same thing goes for getting in too close to the front of the boat. You'll tip it over and, well, again, you're screwed. Now, another helpful exercise that I like is again over at the side of the pool. I'm going to put my face in the water, get my head and neck in that neutral position by looking straight down, and just practice turning my head to each side to breathe. Now, this is going to help build muscle memory and neck flexibility to help you eventually get the right positioning down without even having to think about it. This is going to free you up to focus on some of the more specific techniques later down the road. So tip 1 and tip 2 talked about floating and staying balanced so that we can move forward efficiently without sinking, like a canoe. But a canoe isn't going to move anywhere if nobody paddles. And in this case, your arms are your paddles. So tip 3 is to make sure that your paddles are moving the water in the right direction. Now, as I kind of talked about before, there are a ton of opinions as to just how you should use those paddles. But one thing is going to be true no matter whose technique you learn. If the paddles aren't facing the right way, you're going to have a hard time moving forward. Now, I would like to impart another visualization to you from my friend Tom Ryan over at Tom's Pool School. He says to imagine that you have an eyeball in the palm of your hand, and that when you take a stroke, your eyeball should always be looking at the back wall of the pool. Now, obviously, when you have your arm out in front at the beginning of the stroke, your eyeball is only going to see the bottom of the pool. But once your arm moves and it starts to hit that vertical angle, it should be focused on whatever is directly behind you. Not the dude in the lane next to you, not the fun pattern on that new Speedo you just got in the mail. No, what is directly behind you. Now just think about it for a second. If your eye is looking at the side of the pool, you're wasting a lot of energy by just pushing water to the left and the right, and that's not going to be moving you forward. Also, if your arms are too far apart or too close together, you're A, going to have a hard time getting your eyeball looking in the right direction, but B, you're also not going to be getting much power out of your stroke. And honestly, it puts a little bit of stress on your shoulders, so that could lead to injury. So, head back over to the side of the pool again. I feel like I'm going to say that a million times today. If you don't have a pool, you can do this at the kitchen countertop too. I want you to place your hands on top, far apart, and try to push yourself up. Now, that feels really funky, right? And not only that, it kind of tweaks your shoulders a little bit. That's not a place of power. If you were actually able to push yourself up, you are really strong. Now, put your hands right about shoulder width apart and try again. That is so much easier, right? You're going to be able to pull that water so much easier from this position without having to get all tense trying to do it. Because remember, being tense makes you sink. So, let's review. Tip number 1 is learn to float and to glide. This will help you stay on top of the water and keep you calm, which will also help keep your breathing regulated, which is another little bonus. Tip 2 is to keep your head and neck neutral. Proper positioning with practice will allow you to swim and breathe without sinking your canoe. Tip number 3, paddle placement. Make sure that your arms or your imaginary canoe paddles are pushing the water in the right direction. Keep that eyeball on the back wall, your arms close to your body, and just imagine reaching up and just pulling that water down beside your body as you glide through. So I realize that these are very basic tips, and for those of you that are more advanced, I really appreciate you sticking around. For those of you that are new, just know that this is going to help you build a foundation so that once you hook up with a coach or a training group, you're going to be able to suck in that knowledge and not have to worry about these other things. The very last nugget of wisdom that I would like to impart upon you before I let you go is that the swim is by far the most subjective discipline out of all of the sports in triathlon. I have had probably 10 different swim coaches, and each one of those coaches had a different opinion of just what is the right way to swim. Do not let this frustrate you. Take all of it in with a grain of salt. In the end, you're gonna know what works best for you. It's just like shopping for a prom dress, right? You gotta try on like 15 different dresses before you find the one that works for you. But when you know that it's the right one, you know it.
Okay.